So Jeffrey, so excited to be here with you today. It's been a while since I've seen you in person,
I know.
and here we are again on Zoom, and delighted to be a part of your new event that will air again in March. I'm really excited to hear more from you about the event and its impacts on the world as it was launched in the fall. And just tell us a little bit about this new event.
Sure. It's called A Magnificent New Normal, and it's about how we can use this pandemic pause as an opportunity to step into the highest version of ourselves, and by doing so, also as a group, larger numbers, critical mass, how we can drive the society forward in a kind of leap. And it came about because I was asking people soon after the pandemic started, what have you noticed? What are some of the decisions you're making? What's the best thing you've noticed about the pandemic? And every single person was saying, well, I've realized I have to make some changes in my life, having experienced the contrast of the pandemic pause versus being out in the world. So some people realized they needed to incorporate some of what they were getting in the pause, and some people realized they needed to incorporate more of what they were giving up. But everyone was thinking about making a change. And my alarm went off because I'm aware of something called phase transitions, which occur throughout nature in physics and chemistry and humanity, and that when people are ready to make a change, then that's a part of the phase transition, and new information, high quality information, is needed at that point. I have a model with titration curves in chemistry, but we don't have to go there just yet. And I knew that since consciousness is non-local and non-linear, that if so many people around the world are saying, I need to make a change, it's as if the collective consciousness is bubbling up. So what do we need? We need some of the most intelligent thought leaders in the world coming together with the new perspectives and new choices to help people in that transformation process. Because if people left the pandemic and simply got their old lives back, it would be one of the worst lost opportunities in human history. If they only gained a small incremental improvement in their lives, again, a huge waste. Here we have people in a kind of cauldron. Some describe it as a cocoon. And this is the opportunity to leap forward. So I brought you in, I brought all these fantastic speakers in, and the results were amazing. When we did the test run in the fall, people said it was the most uplifting summit they'd ever been to. One some person said, and I'll quote, in my 73 years of life, this was by far the most magnificent series of talks I've ever heard. Someone said it's the most enjoyable, informative, and transformational presentations I've ever participated in. And this was an indicative not only of the time we're in, but the need of the time being fulfilled by these amazing speakers.
And so thank you for that overview. And we, of course, know that all of that did happen during the pandemic. I think when you released the summit in the fall, we were projecting, right, that we could take advantage of this opportunity and hope for the best, and theoretically that humanity would begin to shift into the new way. And you and I both know from our own perspectives that really it did happen. Like the world has changed. And I'm
It did happen, and there's more to come.
right,
It's
right,
like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I found your interview that I did, which we went into purpose and tracking the purpose through your lives, tracking purpose through the stages of your lives, like your magnificent book, The Golden Thread. Um, we not only talked about that, but you pointed out how humanity had already made a change in the
Oh,
stage of consciousness, going from, I forget the number to the number, but the the um, the Black Lives Matter movement, the biggest social protests in human history, demonstrated for you, as among other data points that you referred to so articulately, that it demonstrated that society had made a change. And what I then started to track with people like Bruce Lipton and Eben Alexander and Sue Morter and Zach Bush and Lynn McTaggart and Alberto Violdo and others is, and as you are very familiar with, the higher stages of consciousness. Some of these folks were talking about consciousness as a field, the new understanding. Some were talking about the prophetic descriptions of this time through indigenous elders, how what you described was, I think, first transition,
Right.
and then we're looking at possible greater a greater change so that where we end up is what the world needs now,
Right.
is what the
Yeah,
world needs desperately.
I have continued to track it. So when we spoke in the fall, I was noticing, not to get too technical, but because of the shutdown, the lockdown, and us being with ourselves, having to face and confront our own lives and experiences and all the discomfort of being in lockdown, that we were forced to go inside, which caused us to then examine who are we, and we began shifting from early to late subtle tier
Right.
collectively. Obviously not everybody, but a good chunk of us, a good chunk of humanity. And that was already happening when we spoke, and I've continued to track it, and it's like, holy cow, it's amazing that not only are more people coming along, but those people are continuing to evolve into the next stage. I mean, I just, more and more people show up to me as clients. Like, I just can't even believe what is showing up now. We have evolved, and like, okay, let's keep going. Let's not stop. Let's bring along the people who've not yet made the shift, because we're still, stuck in our homes. Many of us are still in lockdown, and or still facing the discomfort. So there is some silver lining to this whole mess of the experience that we're in, the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it just continues everything that goes on in our lives, politically and economically and otherwise. We just experience one difficult and uncomfortable situation after another, where we have to face what we've created, and we have to face ourselves. So,
Your interview alone was pivotal for people's awareness because you describe a map
mhm,
of where consciousness goes in terms of its own stages of evolution. And you described very specifically the shift from early to late um,
subtle tier.
subtle tier. And you described with data points what you were seeing in the news and individually
Mhm,
and how it fit in there. Now, for people who go through this program, we originally ran it as a 40-day and 40-night thing to see how that would work. And for some, it was perfect. For others, they want a concentrated retreat space. So we're putting a 7-day program now together for March 8th release. So people can get the whole package and set up a 40-day if they want. But for those that like a deep, rich concentration of a deep dive, it'll be 7 very packed days. Your interview alone delivers an understanding of
mm,
this time. But if you add to that, like the indigenous wisdom of the Achuar as represented by Lynn Twist, or the Alberto Ilarion Merkuliev, and he talks about the elders and what's described by elder wisdom also for this time, and Alberto Vierdo, and then Bruce Lipton, who talks about consciousness as a field, and others. It's like every single interview, I always ask the first question, which I asked you, what is your vision of a post pandemic civilization? And everyone delivers a level of understanding and confidence that just by being in the room with them, it reframes the entire pandemic from a fear filled,
mhm,
tragic, random problem to a prophesied prediction that appears to be the antidote for civilization, which would otherwise be careening off a cliff. And not only that, but I ask everyone, what is your suggestions for how people can step into the highest version of themselves? And then we have how to change relationship with money, the principles of success, the principles of relationships, the finding the purpose in your lives, how to shift the brain physiology so that you can actually adopt new patterns. How do you shift new patterns to habits like BJ Fogg? Like we have Jewel, who turns out to be brilliant, the musician. We have Jerome Flynn from Game of Thrones, a accidental mystic. We have like Lynn McTaggart talking about the intention experiment and things like that. Zach Bush, who blows our mind with the microbiome. Sue Morter, who talks about her mystical experience and how people can gain benefit sending energy up the spine. So many specific details that it's not just that this time is a potential platform for leap, but here are steps you can take. And here are ways that you can do it, not just for yourself, but since this is the time for humanity to leap forward, we have a job to do. And one of my favorite quotes, it's in both Lynn Twist and Bruce Lipton talk about the metamorphosis of a butterfly. And in the physiology of the butterfly transformation, the caterpillar first becomes very unsustainable, eats 100 times its weight, completely disastrous, becomes a cocoon, it becomes gel, and then imaginal cells wake up and they find each other and they orchestrate the transformation to a butterfly. As Lynn Twist says, if you're listening to this, you're an imaginal cell.
Right.
And so it's sort of like it, it invites people to do the job now because this is the easiest time to transform, perhaps in human history, the easiest time because of the changed environment. And as you say, the forced discomfort, the forced reflection time, the pull, as I like to say, pulling out of the deep grooves of our lives and now waiting to redefine ourselves as we go back into the world. That's when you need right information to redefine.
And I want to just um, comment on the cocoon effect, um, the transformative potential of this time. I know that some people think, well, I'm not that far along. I haven't been doing the work for 20, 30 years, or maybe I'm not ready, or, well, that's for those other people, who really care and are poised to step into the next version of, that version of themselves, whatever our limiting belief is about our availability and readiness to be of use right now. And what I know, as I've studied consciousness over the stages of our life, that butterfly effect happens at every stage. There is a deep transition that happens from, infancy to childhood, and childhood to late childhood, and late childhood to adolescence, and early adulthood, and middle adulthood. And each of these transitory phases that we experience is one of those butterfly, cocoon turning to butterfly places. And so it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum. This is for everybody. There is no right or wrong place I should be in order to step into my next role in this quest to make a different world, to make a more magnificent world. We all have a role, and whatever our next expression is the one that we should be looking forward to and intending, because each of us has something really important to do that's our next stage. So I get the sense that some people are hanging back and thinking, well, I'm just not one of those people. I haven't been doing this for 20 years. And, I have so much still to learn, and I'm not aligned with my purpose. And, I've not been on the quest, and it's like, it just doesn't matter, because every one of us has something to gain. And there's so many of all of these mini interviews that you've conducted, Jeffrey. There's something in each of the interviews, wherever you are, that can propel us to, or even take just really small steps to the next version of us. So I want to encourage people who wouldn't necessarily consider themselves ripe for this message, because every one of us on this planet is needed at this time. Everybody, no matter what you've been doing or where you've been or whether you're currently stuck, there's something here for you to take you to the next place. And we need you. We need everybody on this train moving forward. So,
And I love how in your work you help people understand their purpose, which is in one way how they differ from
right.
others, what their special um, reason for being is.
Yeah.
And I take that very seriously. And I have a video. When you register, you get a video that I did, the 7 tips for how to use the Magnificent New Normal the best. And rather than trying to absorb every single speaker's every single gem, we all have a way of reverberating
Hmm.
with what is appropriate for us now. And um, I describe ways to use a journal, ways to circle and star and underline and compile and give yourself a to-do list and learn about your own magnificence. I specifically mention, when you're listening to about your purpose in our interview, that becomes another set of information. So you're going to learn knowledge, action, and insight. And
Hmm.
the insight about yourself, that all becomes summarized in a page that I call My Magnificence, so that you start to realize what's different about you, what's special. Some people will talk about mission, you talk about purpose, some people talk about foundational qualities or superhero or superpowers. But the process is not to try and absorb everything like you're in school and getting a quiz on it, but listening to it and figuring out what reverberates, what catches your attention, and write that down. And that becomes your post it note. That becomes what you read before bed. That becomes what you think about, write about, discuss. And you can pull out those gems and compile them in a certain way and go through those and get the ones that are the most powerful. And that is the food for the transformation that has your name on it and no one else's, because that's reverberated with you and it hits you in your own way where you're at, whether you've been working on yourself for 40, 50 years, whether you're a newbie, it doesn't matter, because the field is set up to reverberate.
Yeah. I mean, it really is going to take all of us. It's not something that we can partition out of our lives and say, oh, those people are taking care of it. I mean, we've got some really big planetary issues here. And it really is going to take all of us. And I really invite, my friends and colleagues and people around the world to participate in this. It was important in the fall as we were, hunkered down in the pandemic, and it's still really important as we're hoping to pull out of the pandemic sometime soon. We'll see. And I think we've still got our work cut out for us. I mean, obviously.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Holly. I know that
Jeffrey.
I know that people that are in your community are deep feeling, deep thinking, uh, committed to growth, and I'm so glad that we get to share this with your community.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for your time.